The day began like any other at Grant's auto repair shop, a small garage tucked at the edge of town. The sound of clinking tools, the smell of grease, and the hum of engines filled the air. Inside, Marcus Grant, a 42-year-old mechanic with strong arms and calm eyes, worked under the hood of a battered pickup truck. To his neighbors, Marcus was just the guy who could fix anything. Few knew about his past. Few even imagined that the man in grease-stained overalls once wore a uniform far more dangerous than a mechanic's. As Marcus tightened the last bolt, the bell above the garage door rang, and a police cruiser pulled up outside. Out stepped Officer Reynolds, a tall, heavy-set cop with a swagger that screamed authority. Reynolds wasn't new to this neighborhood. He had a reputation for targeting black men with unnecessary stops and harassment. He often bragged at the diner about keeping the streets in line, a phrase everyone knew was code. "Morning, officer," Marcus said evenly, wiping his hands on a rag. But Reynolds didn't reply. Instead, he walked straight into the shop, eyes narrowed. "This your place?" Reynolds asked, scanning the garage as though it were a crime scene. "Been mine for 10 years, Marcus replied calmly. Reynolds smirked. "Funny. I got a report that stolen parts were being moved through here. You got anything you want to tell me?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "All my work is clean. You know that." But Reynolds wasn't listening. He shoved Marcus's toolbox off the counter, tools scattering across the floor. The metallic clang echoed through the garage. "Hey!" Marcus raised his voice for the first time, but still kept his composure. "You people always got an excuse," Reynolds sneered, stepping closer. "Hands where I can see 'em." The garage went silent, except for the distant sound of cars on the highway. Marcus raised his hands slowly, his calm eyes never leaving Reynolds. Inside, though, something stirred, a discipline, a training drilled into him years ago in the deserts and jungles of faraway lands. Reynolds pulled his gun. The glint of steel under the fluorescent lights seemed out of place in a mechanic shop. "Get on the ground," the officer barked. Marcus stayed still, his deep voice steady. "You don't want to do this." Reynolds laughed. "Don't tell me what I want. On the ground now." For the first time, Marcus's eyes hardened. He had seen men like Reynolds before, men who thought power came from the weapon in their hand. But Marcus knew better. He had faced armed insurgents, hostile ambushes, and firefights where every second meant life or death. Compared to that, Reynolds was just noise. Still, Marcus lowered himself slowly, not out of fear but control. His mind was calculating, watching Reynolds' stance, the tremor in his hand, the way his finger twitched near the trigger. Then, the door creaked open. A teenage boy, no older than 16, froze in the doorway. It was Jamal, Marcus's neighbor, who often came by after school to learn about engines. His eyes widened in terror at the sight of the cop's gun. "Get out." Marcus barked quickly, but Jamal stammered, "Mr. Grant, what's happening?" "Out." Marcus roared again, sharper this time. Jamal stumbled back, running down the street. Reynolds chuckled. "Scared the kid good. Guess he knows who's in charge." Marcus took a slow breath. "You're not in charge here." Reynolds's smirk faded. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." Marcus's voice was calm, but beneath it lay a storm. He had promised himself, after retiring from the military, that he would never raise a hand in violence again. But the cop was pushing him closer and closer to that line. Reynolds pressed the gun closer. "One more word, and I'll put you down right here." Marcus's eyes locked with his. In that moment, the soldier inside him, the man who had led Delta Force teams through the deadliest missions, awoke. His stance shifted, subtle but sure. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. And Reynolds had no idea what kind of man he had just threatened. The garage felt like a trap, heavy with tension. Officer Reynolds gripped his pistol tighter, convinced he had control. But Marcus Grant, kneeling on the oil-stained concrete, was no ordinary man. "Last chance," Reynolds growled. "Face down. Hands behind your back." Marcus's calm gaze didn't waver. He had followed commands like these before, when surrender was a tactic, not defeat. He remembered training missions where one wrong move meant a bullet in the skull, ambushes where he'd had to outthink enemies with better weapons. His mind calculated angles, distances, timing. Reynolds's breathing was uneven, his trigger discipline sloppy. Marcus waited until Reynolds shifted his weight, just slightly. That was enough. In one explosive motion, Marcus rolled sideways, knocking over the heavy creeper board used for sliding under cars. It clattered against Reynolds's shins. The officer stumbled, his aim breaking for a crucial second. Marcus surged up, his hand snapping around Reynolds's wrist. With a sharp twist, he redirected the gun toward the ceiling. Bang! A deafening shot tore into the garage rafters, raining dust and splinters. Reynolds cursed, trying to wrestle control, but Marcus was already 3 steps ahead. Years of Delta Force training kicked in like instinct. He slammed Reynolds's arm against the workbench, the pistol skittering across the floor. A swift pivot, a shoulder lock, and the officer was face down on the hood of the pickup truck Marcus had been repairing minutes ago. "Don't move," Marcus ordered, his voice steady, commanding, the voice of a soldier used to being obeyed. But Reynolds was too arrogant to listen. He spat. "You're under arrest, boy. You hear me? You're nothing but Marcus tightened the hold, cutting off the insult. "I'm not your boy," he said coldly. By now, Jamal had returned, this time with his phone held high, recording everything. Neighbors gathered at the shop door, eyes wide as they watched their quiet mechanic subdue an armed officer like it was nothing. "Mr. Grant, what are you doing?" Jamal asked, voice trembling. Marcus glanced at the boy. "Protecting myself, and teaching him something." With controlled precision, Marcus released Reynolds just enough to spin him around and pin him against the car again. He stood tall, breathing evenly, grease still staining his hands but power radiating from his posture. "You want to know who I am?" Marcus said, his voice carrying across the garage. "I spent 20 years in places you've only seen on TV. I led missions where failure wasn't an option. Men trusted me with their lives. And I protected this country so men, like you could wear that badge." The crowd murmured. Even Reynolds's eyes flickered with doubt. Marcus leaned in closer. "I was Delta Force, and I've faced enemies who made you look like a rookie with a toy gun." Gasps rippled through the garage. Jamal's phone captured every word, every stunned expression. Reynolds tried to recover his bravado. "You think anyone's gonna believe you over me? I'm the law here." Marcus stepped back, finally releasing him. "The law doesn't give you the right to terrorize people because of the color of their skin." He turned to the crowd. "And today the law is watching." At that moment, sirens wailed in the distance. Other squad cars pulled up, officers rushing inside after the 911 calls neighbors had made during the commotion. They froze at the sight, Reynolds disarmed, sweating, his authority shattered, while Marcus stood unflinching before him. The police sergeant stepped forward. "What the hell happened here?" Jamal pushed his phone forward. "It's all here, sir." He pulled a gun on Mr. Grant for no reason. The sergeant's eyes flicked to Reynolds, who stammered. He resisted. "I had reports." "Reports?" the sergeant snapped. "Or just your bias again?" Marcus didn't move, didn't gloat. He simply stood in silence, letting the truth settle in. Within minutes, Reynolds was placed in cuffs, not Marcus. The crowd outside erupted in cheers and disbelief. A cop brought down by his own prejudice, exposed by the very man he tried to humiliate. Later that night, as Marcus locked up the garage, Jamal lingered at the door. "Mr. Grant, I didn't know you were all that," the boy said, awe in his voice. Marcus smiled faintly. "That part of my life is behind me, but sometimes you can't stay silent. Sometimes you have to remind people that respect isn't optional." Jamal nodded slowly. "You didn't just defend yourself today. You defended all of us." Marcus placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then let's hope one day you won't have to." As the streetlights buzzed overhead, Marcus walked into the quiet night. To the world, he was still just a mechanic. But to those who had witnessed the day's events, he was something much more. A reminder that true strength isn't about power. It's about standing firm against injustice, no matter the cost. And Officer Reynolds? By dawn, his name would be trending for all the wrong reasons. Marcus Grant, the ex-Delta Force operator turned mechanic, wouldn't need to say another word. His actions had spoken louder than anything else ever could.